Let's go to Gainesville and get the Florida perspective of it from Graham Hall, covers Florida for the 24/7 Sports Network. Graham, thanks for the time. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure to be here and talk all things Florida, coaching search, Lane Kiffin, you name it. It's always a pleasure, guys.
Look, it's what's the energy in Gainesville right now? Like, what's the vibe?
Yeah, the majority of the focus is on the coaching search rather than paying attention to back-to-back rivalry games for Florida to end the season. Sitting here at 3-7, most people have turned towards the future, from the fans to, I think you could say, some with the players as well, the season not going the way they wanted. And I think that there's a little bit of anxiety regarding what Lane Kiffin's decision could be. Obviously, the back-to-back visits from members of his family to Gainesville, first on Sunday and then Baton Rouge on Monday. I think that Florida is, the fan base at least, is a little bit anxious about what is going to happen because LSU has the resources. It's a coveted job, just like you could make a case for the University of Florida being, but LSU has obviously been to the mountaintop more recently than Florida has. The Gators haven't won a championship since 2008. And this is a critical hire for Florida's administration. You can live with Lane Kiffin staying in Oxford. It doesn't mean he necessarily failed. You could have offered him everything he wanted. And he just chose to stay in a place where he has them on the precipice of making the college football playoff and potentially going 11-1 if they can beat Mississippi State next week, which will be one of the best seasons in program history up there in Oxford. But you can't live with him going to LSU. That would be seen by Florida's athletic department as a failure in the eyes of many Florida fans. And I don't know how accurate that would be to gauge it because, quite frankly, they're two different programs with different athletic departments and resources. But Florida fans are so invested in landing Lane Kiffin that almost anyone but him being the next head coach in Gainesville would be perceived as a failure. So it is a very interesting time right now. There's some anxiety coupled with a good bit of confidence from those within the program. We haven't heard anything to suggest that Florida's athletic department feels uneasy about their pursuit of Lane Kiffin. They have talked with people in his camp about making sure that he has the NIL resources that he needs. He's obviously familiar with Gainesville, having gone on his first date with his ex-wife, Layla, at Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, is a guy who is familiar with the state of Florida. His son is a fan of the Gators. I think people have seen those photos on social media of him rocking Florida gear, even when his dad has been the coach at Ole Miss. So fans are kind of just in a holding pattern right now, waiting to see how this thing shakes out. And everyone is kind of waiting for Lane Kiffin to make his mind up, which, as everyone knows who has followed Lane Kiffin, that could change daily, which makes for a really riveting situation right now.
Look, from the LSU perspective, LSU and Florida were in the same hiring market 4 years ago. The time before that, when Ed Ogeron was hired, LSU and Texas were kind of going head-to-head. Was there a reaction in Gainesville when Brian Kelly was fired, and did that do anything to the confidence level or the apprehension in terms of who the Gators might get as compared to LSU?
I think Florida fans, just like a lot of LSU fans, saw that Brian Kelly and LSU was just not a match made in heaven like many people thought it was going to be 4 years ago. I think Florida fans felt a little bit better when they, quite frankly, saw the discord and some of the hiccups, I guess I could say, that have happened in the post-Brian Kelly firing, from the governor to some of the comments made, the parting of ways with the athletic director, Scott Woodward, to some of the comments made about the coaching market. I think Florida fans felt better about some of the statements that were made and not really having the governor's influence weighing into this process whatsoever. Now, things have changed in the past 48 hours, I think, with representatives of Kiffin's family going to Baton Rouge, thinking that they're going to make probably a more lucrative contract offer to Lane Kiffin than Florida would. Not that it's going to be significant, but I do think you could see LSU have a little bit stronger of a financial offer. Most Florida fans have told themselves that Lane Kiffin has made his money. It's not going to come down to financials for him necessarily. It's about where he thinks he can win at the highest level and be able to balance that work-life, quite frankly, balance that he is looking for. He wants some privacy. He wants to be able to do hot yoga. He wants to go out in public and not be bothered. He wants to do things his way, whether that's limiting speaking tours, not really being that spokesman on the road that you've seen head coaches be when they go around on the spring speaking tour every single year. He's going to weigh those factors and he wants to be considered in the conversation of the Ryan Days, the Nick Sabans of the world, and he wants to, when you potentially talk about a program-defining coach, he wants to be in that conversation, whether it's at LSU, Ole Miss, or Florida. So they felt a little bit more uneasiness in the last couple of days, certainly, after it looked like for the last month that LSU was kind of mismanaging this search. Now it's kind of looking like a little bit more of an even playing field. And a lot of Florida fans who have lost confidence in the athletic department's ability to make the right hire and outspend the competition are probably sitting here a little bit anxious right now on a Wednesday afternoon.
When you look at the infrastructure at Florida, from the athletic director to the collective to the revenue sharing to the facilities, like, is there a sense that Florida is with the times? I know that the world is different than it was 10 years ago. LSU's fought that battle. Really, everyone has. Like, how do you feel Florida is set up as far as the infrastructure goes to cultivate a winning football program?
Over the last 2 years, they've become much more, I think, formal and with the times, I guess you could say, with the NIL era, transfer portal era, than they were a couple years ago. I mean, the Jaden Rashada saga was such a stain on Florida's initial NIL efforts. It led to a changing of the name, going from the Gator Collective to Florida Victorious, an ousting of several people involved in that. And they really have more qualified people in charge now who understand the market, work with NIL, work with boosters, donors, and help provide NIL opportunities for athletes. So if you'd asked me 2 years ago, I would have said, oh man, this thing needs a lot of work. But right now it's in line. And now, are they as a top 5 NIL collective? Are they with the Oregons and the Ohio States of the world? No, but they're in the top 15. They're able to compete annually for players. They've done a good job with revenue sharing. There's a lot more continuity and cooperation between Florida's athletic department, the head coach, and the booster collective. They're all on the same page. And I do think that it's worth noting that you had seen a desire to invest in the football program wane a little bit as the results were not there during the Napier era. A lot of those boosters have come back on board, from what I've heard, have promised significant 7-figure sums, so that whoever is the head coach, which they, from what I talked to, most likely want it to be Lane Kiffin, there's no concern that he won't have the resources in Gainesville to be able to do what he did in Oxford, land top 5 transfer portal classes for each of the last 4 years. And they've tried to sell his camp on, you will be in one of the most talent-rich states, just like Louisiana has done, I'm sure. You'll be in one of the most talent-rich states in the country, where the high school recruiting will be a lot better and easier for you than it was in Oxford. So they've figured that piece out. Even if the Rashada thing is what a lot of people think of when they think of the NIL efforts at Florida, it's a lot more professional than it was just 2 years ago.
What's the confidence level in Gainesville now? And I guess to piggyback on that question, like, do you think that Lane Kiffin will be the next coach at Florida?
I think there's a really solid chance. I put it at 70% earlier today. I think that is absolutely a realistic possibility. Now, things can change. Get back to me tomorrow and I may give you a different percentage. I think that there's a lot of confidence. They've identified him as being the guy for not just the past month. You go back to last year when these conversations about Billy Napier were ongoing. Many people were floating the name Lane Kiffin. Florida's athletic department has come around. They're largely in favor of it happening, and they have confidence that it's going to happen. I think that the athletic department also views it as the safest hire that Florida could make, because, there's always a revisionist history in college football, but in 4 years, if Lane Kiffin doesn't work out at the University of Florida, no one's going to sit there, or if they do, they're incorrect. No one's going to sit there and say, well, this is a bad hire. It's not a bad hire whatsoever. It's probably the safest one you could make, where if it just doesn't work out, no one's blaming the athletic department unless there's a drop-off in resources or something else happens. So my confidence level, like I said, is 70%. Also, I think it's factored in that Florida hasn't really, if they do have one privately, it hasn't come out publicly. No one really knows what Florida's backup plan is, which, like I said, is kind of a precarious position to be in, because you've put all your chips into one basket. And if you don't get your main guy, you're going to have to pivot here right before early signing day, or potentially after early signing day, and make another hire. And I think most people are so invested in Kiffin that if it's not him, they're going to be disappointed either way. Even if you land a Lincoln Riley or, someone like a Cliff Kingsbury or one of the top coordinators out there like Will Stein or Glenn Schumann, most people are so invested in a printed shirts and started talking about, oh, we're getting Kiffin. And if it doesn't happen, they're going to be disappointed. And if it's a coordinator, they're going to have to be what they have been for the past decade. They're going to have to stay patient rather than being immediately re-energized by having a guy, a 50-year-old Lane Kiffin here, to try and, quote-unquote, save this program.
Feels like the folks in Gainesville and the folks in Baton Rouge are feeling very similar about everything that's going on here. They don't hear a lot of backup plans. I hear a lot of confidence, and we'll see how this whole thing shakes out. Graham Hall covers the Gators for the 24/7 Sports Network. Good enough to give us some time here on this Wednesday. Thanks, Graham.
Pleasure's all mine. Y'all take care out there.
Sure will. It's interesting that you hear him talk and you listen to the folks out of Baton Rouge, and everybody's kind of got their thoughts on it, and nobody is rubber stamping anything. It feels like the confidence level in Gainesville and Baton Rouge is pretty high. It feels like the tension in Oxford is extremely high, and I don't know. It just feels like it's untenable in Oxford unless he just wakes up one morning and goes, I'm staying at Ole Miss, baby, and then signs a contract. The longer it drags on, the worse things feel in Oxford based on everything I'm listening to and reading there from northern Mississippi. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.